Welcome to the Tech and Accent podcast.
Here you will learn about being an expat, working abroad, technology, and more from non-native English speakers. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tech and Accent podcast. I am Walmyr and today I'm here with Ioana. Hey Ioana, how are you doing?
Hey there, Varmin. I'm pretty good, thank you. Very happy to be around and have this podcast discussion with you.
Thank you for accepting the invitation. So to get started, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Yeah, so I'm Ioana Chiorean. Full length name will be Stefania Ioana Chiorean, but I don't use that one, even if it's my first name. Probably that's the first thing we can mention in terms of different cultures. And I'm an engineer manager at Box. I do a lot of DevRel activities, so if you see me in that role too, for sure, it's still about Ioana Chiorean.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the introduction. So since this podcast is called Tech and Accent, and we called about technology and we called about accent, and it's basically for non-native English speakers to share their stories with our audience. Could you tell us from where are you and where do you live and how do you got there, please?
Yeah, I'm from Romania. I would literally say the middle of Transylvania. I am from a small town, Aiud, but I spent 15 years in Cluj-Napoca, which is a very big tech hub. More than a couple of years ago, I think with the pandemic, I decided to move to Berlin because I was already commuting a lot for events and my partner was there. So I decided to try to live abroad too. And here I am in Germany. And after 3-4 years now, it's easier a bit being European citizen to go back home. So I wouldn't have a real milestone. It took me a while to make it officially in my hometown, Berlin. But nowadays, here you can find me.
Yeah. And I had the pleasure to meet you in person last year for Test.js Summit. We have been chatting a lot before that online. So it was really good to meet you in person. And I love Berlin. I have been there for I think 3 times already, and one of the things that I like the most is that they have so many vegan restaurants everywhere. I love the neighborhood where I stayed, where they had many great options for vegans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Berlin is very, very diverse, both in terms of food, cultures that you see, and I think for this podcast is worth mentioning that if you walk around Berlin, you barely hear German language. I'm not saying you don't, but you definitely hear such a multitude of different languages, and it's very, very fun to try to identify what language it is, to see if you're knowing, to be open to listening to that. It's really, really cool.
That's something that that is not in our script, but I wanted to explore a little bit because in the rest of Germany, it seems that if you don't speak English, you are kind of lost. That's my impression when I went to Hamburg and when I went to Munich as well. But Berlin is very international, right?
Yeah. So honestly, even today, I had to fix something for my bike and I did it in English. Mm-hmm. I do learn German. I'm practicing it. I didn't go for certification or anything because my work is not related to Germany. I mean, I work for international startups, so English is still the main language that we use. I am not mandatory using Germany around here, only when I deal with administration or people that do not speak, but mostly my daily errands could be done easily in English too. I do understand that sometimes the German people that work are a bit reluctant because they are afraid they will not speak a good English, and maybe the law here is a bit more tight. If they do a mistake, that is something that will be condemned for, which is not the case sometimes with us in tech. We can easily say oh, I'm not a native, I don't speak, this is not my native language, if I do a mistake, please understand it. But in their roles as being official administrative or other stuff, other roles like that, I don't think they can make a mistake, so that's why they push more for German. But I live here for 3 years fully or so, almost 4, and I had no issues with that being fluent in German.
Yeah.
Yes, there is the running joke that you can, meet carte bitte with card please when you have to pay, kind of things, that three words that give you fluency in German. But if you know basic, really basic one, like thank you and I need this, I don't need this, it's easily to navigate in Berlin.
Yeah. This is very interesting. Um, and and now that you covered your introduction and a bit of where you're from, so you are close to the Dracula city, Transylvania, and now you live in Berlin. One thing that I am very curious and that we have actually spoken about when I invited you to my YouTube channel is open source contributions. I know you had a history contributing to Mozilla. Would you mind telling us a little bit about this, please?
Oh, not at all. And I think it really fits the topic of the podcast, because when you invited me and we were like, oh, we are going to talk about languages and not being native, this is the moment I always go back. When I started volunteering and working also with Mozilla, I started working with an international company and foundation. And of course, people from different cultures that were reuniting or working in English, but very few of them were really native English speakers. So then is when I start, hearing different accents more and more. I did travel and I lived 3 months in US prior to that, where, funny enough, I learned and practiced more Spanish than English. And
where did you live in the US?
In South Carolina.
Okay.
And that is where I had the first incident about speaking English with an accent. I can mention it later, that one. But going back to Mozilla, meeting so many people from so many different countries with so many different accents, I realized that at the end of the day, the only thing that counts is that we can understand each other. Yeah. If I will misspell something, if I use the wrong, because probably you will see like, oh, the East European accent of English. It doesn't quite matter. Of course, people can judge you. I'm not saying that you're not going to be judged, but it's up to you. It doesn't matter that you're going to say like, oh, she has an accent, or it doesn't matter that I can do a presentation, I can voice my concerns, I can voice my solution, because we're still working this. So it's important to be able to express the work you do, the solutions you want to bring to the table. Those people can understand me. Of course, 100% I do mistakes in terms of, maybe grammar or terms. Literally nowadays I realize the vocabulary is narrow sometimes when you're not a native, because there are sentences and stuff like that, or metaphors that you want to use but you don't know them, or you hear them and you're struggling to understand them. But those are just small bits I would consider not blockers, for sharing language. And I try to speak even in my broken Spanish sometimes when I'm in Spanish countries, or French. I didn't practice French like 10 years, but I feel like it's at the end of the day really helpful to be able to understand parts of it and try to speak it, than to just shut yourself down because I don't speak a perfect English, I don't speak a perfect Spanish, or right now that it's just such a blocker. Just be open. I understand it's painful to be mistaken and see people correcting you. I had almost no interaction. I don't recall any bad like this interaction with people correcting me or anything. I do try, if they don't understand, try again with different words. But traveling so much and working with so many communities that I got to in the open source community literally gave me the confidence that even if I mistake, at the end of the day, if those people understood what I wanted to say, that's the only thing that matters. And it can be on us too, because we also are humans. And I can speak with someone with a bad accent, and maybe in my mind I would say like, oh my God, this person barely speaks English. But in 5 seconds, well, I never voice that out. Literally helps no one to criticize that. But after the conversation, I'm not left with, oh my God, the accent that they had. No, I'm like, oh, that was a good idea that they mentioned, or I should implement that. That will help me. These are the things really that matters. And working with Mozilla, also did localization. I try to, translate English into Romanian, which is honestly a very hard thing to do, because technically used words or titles for things are very awkward translated into Romanian if you're not used to it by default. I did my studies in English, so I literally had to apply to masters after my English studies in Romanian, and I spent, unluckily, half of the day trying to translate spanning tree, because tree in Romanian translation basic, it was really sounding really bad, and it took me like half a day to understand there is a term for that, going back to my colleagues that studied in Romania. So yeah, working in an open source community definitely made me more confident in terms of language skill, or what really matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I would say that like open source, for that to work really well, you have to be open for everyone to be able to contribute. And in this podcast, we are here for people, exactly for people that are non-native English speakers, to not be afraid of speaking with their accent and making mistakes, as far as they evolve, as far as they can make them understand each other, and that's the main reason why we are doing this here. And besides your contributions to Mozilla, you are very active in other communities as well. For instance, like Git Nation, where we met for Test.js Summit 3 years ago already. So could you tell us a little bit about your contributions to other communities like Git Nation or any other as well?
Yeah. So one of the things that I did as a volunteer with Mozilla was this side of DevRel. I never had an official role for it, but I was going to conferences or organizing events from different technologies. What I appreciated that it was never about selling Mozilla's products, like you have to use Firefox, but mostly were onto using technologies like the web and anything like that. So I always focus more on advancing tech technologies and not to promote a product. So in that case, I started going to conferences. I met this world of events, and that's how I got in contact with Git Nation. I was invited, after speaking at other events, invited to be part of the committee with you and analyze, you see, even now errors, but we correct them and move forward, analyze and triage proposals. After that, I literally also applied to some of them. I'm also part as an ambassador for JS Hero, which is Romanian tech conferences, but open to everyone, and we do want to make it more diverse. Cluj is a really nice city, it's very well connected, so we do invite people from all over the world to join us there for conferences. Why I'm doing this is that I think I gain a lot of things non-material while working in open source. This kind of networking that you do, friends all over the world, experiences to travel, meeting cultures, which I wouldn't be otherwise available for me. I don't come from a privileged background of, wealth or travel. My parents barely travel anywhere. So whenever when I was first time traveling alone for a tech event, I was like, oh my God, I love this. How can I do more of this? And I got involved. I'm not overselling it. I don't want to say that everything is, pink and good. Open source communities sometimes are rough, but I had bad experience too. But again, it was a balance. What counts for me? What do I want to do more going forward versus do I let others drag me down? Am I doing this for them or am I doing this for me? So I continue giving back to the communities the opportunities that I had. If I still have time, I contribute. I do a lot of volunteer work. Mostly this work that we do for conferences is, in my case or our case, is volunteer work. We are not paid for it. The most you might get is like a ticket or your transportation to the event or stuff like that. In my case, in Berlin, I was literally here. So I'm not doing for the monetary part, which is important. I'm not dismissing it. I also want to give back to the community things that I could, like the opportunities I got in open source too.
Yeah. One other thing that I wanted to explore, which is also not exactly in our agenda, but you touched upon the pandemic. And how was it for you to be still contributing and active in communities when everything was online, which is when we met, like when I was invited to be part of the committee of the SJS Summit. It was during the pandemic where the events were happening online. Could you explore this part with us a little bit?
Yeah, I think tech side is a bit privileged in this case because
It is.
yeah, we were a bit, used to. I used to work before with teams not from my city. Even if I was working in an office with a local team, I also had teams remotely in other cities and other countries too. So we had these processes before defined. We didn't use this permanently, just like, stand-ups or calls in the evening to end the day. So it was easier a bit. For example, I was teaching kids programming with NGO in Romania called Dalia's Book, and we used to go to the kids, especially because one session was with disabled kids, with deaf kids. So we had to go there to teach them. Unfortunately, that was not available in the pandemic, but we realized that having the technology online and the courses give us the opportunity to reach villages or remote locations that me as a volunteer could not travel weekly to teach those kids programming. So that was the good side of the pandemic, giving us access to remote places or remote opportunities. To expand it to the tech sector, conferences moving online realized that they can target, again, more diverse speakers that they cannot travel, different health issues or different accommodation issues, like families with kids. If you want a speaker that has to be next to their kid more time, you will take 1 hour of their time. Of course, preparation before counts, but literally the conference will be 1 hour maybe, or half an hour from their time, versus a conference in person who you ask them to travel a day before, be there for the conference, and max in the evening or the next day they travel. So it's like at least 3 days impacted for one slot of presentations, their personal time. Of course, it's not the same. I missed so much the networking discussions, like for conferences, and this again, having all hands with Mozilla, where you meet 1,000 people in one place. You literally bump each other on the hallway, and you're like, "Hey, how you doing? Oh, I saw your picture," or "Oh, you wrote that article, really cool." When this thing happens online, you're there for the presentation. Maybe you comment in the chat a bit, but you don't have this bumping into each other moments or walking towards the venue together that happened before. So the pandemic, I think, gave voice to many people that didn't have the chance before, in terms of having online situation, them presenting, create an opportunity for people that don't live in the big cities for conferences or events. And also put us in a place to think about this more, like how can we reach more people? How can we, get to those that are not our main audience all the time, like people that go to conferences. And I think, for example, Good Nations conferences kept this even now. They do 1 day in person and 1 day online. And I think it's a good combo if people, you cover those that want to travel for conferences that they can. And after that, you also, from your comfort of your home, you can enjoy a good session, a good talk happening online.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I got super interested on your experience teaching children how to code, because it's something that I always had in the back of my mind as something that I would like to do. So maybe we could chat offline about this, and you could give me some advice, because I've been teaching test automation for professionals for quite a while, and I would love to teach children as well. It's something that would be really nice for me to have experience with, because I think like nowadays children, they are very into technology, not as it was in the past where technology was not available for everyone. So if you learn very early, you can be a very good developer or anything when you are not that, you don't need like to go to the university to start learning to code
Yeah.
anymore. Like you can start earlier, and
Yeah.
it's something that brings my interest.
We'll talk for sure. I'll share you a bit. I also wrote an article of it. I don't have a blog or anything, but it's on Medium. I'll share with you. But I want to mention that my motto with teaching kids, it even goes beyond this, that I really believe that they have to be confident using software, no matter what role they choose. So I don't believe everyone has to code, because we still need doctors.
It doesn't need to be a developer but
Exactly.
knowing how to code might help you in other professions or your personal life.
You're gonna use AI from now on. You have to be confident using them. You have to understand that it's not a human being that gives you money at the bank, It's a automatic system, it's a machine, and it's programmed by someone. And not to be afraid that to, decline something by pressing X, or let me make this program more personalized with me, creating your own website as a doctor, or your scheduling more automatic, sending messages to people like, today I'm not at work because this, move the patients to the next day. So all roles, we want it or not, in the future will use technology. I really want kids to be empowered to use technology and not be afraid or not be put back because they didn't have access to technology while they were growing up.
I loved you put it this way. It made it so much better than what I was saying. Now,
I talk with parents and they're like, I don't want my kid to be on their own life. Well, you decide what your kid does online. Does it play games that help them develop skills? Because sometimes there are these coding games that, critical thinking is very important.
Yeah.
Like something that really struck with me a lot, that back in the days we didn't have access to so many technologies or platforms. We literally had to be small hackers to do things.
Yeah.
We sent messages through the terminal in our class because we didn't have any other messenger. We didn't have Facebook or Yahoo Messenger back then. So the server, sending message was our way of doing stuff. So many things that we not had to debug and literally play white hackers. Nothing bad. I didn't rob a bank. Nothing that. But things that were not developed. Now you want to see a movie, it's you pay and it's easier to. You want to listen to music. I'm not saying to do bad stuff again, but it was just not available before. We didn't have these things and we had to dig for them. We had to learn for them. So critical thinking, how to do stuff, it's another skill that through developing or coding, you can get it.
Yeah, nowadays you could even, I myself, I love to code. It's something that if I can't code, I would be sad. But sometimes I don't have a computer with me. And I have some apps on my mobile that allow me to practice coding in a gamification way, which, help my brain to keep learning and improving. And this is something we can explore in many different ways. It doesn't necessarily need to be in a computer with the keyboard, with a code editor open. There are many different ways you can start. You can still practice. There is one classic question that we ask all the guests here, and it's time to get to it. Since this is Tech and Accent, I would love if you could share with us any embarrassing moment that could be language or accent related with our audience here. Do you have any?
I don't have one in mind specific. I was thinking earlier about this when we discussed, but so two things that I have in mind are all this mix of Latin languages that I learn. I never learned in school. So I learned French in school for a few years, but not fully. It was half learned, half just passing through.
We had a French guest here in the podcast as well.
Oh, for sure, my French will not qualify for a talk there. But funny enough, joke or not joke, I learned Spanish through telenovelas. So again, my vocabulary, because we chatted about vocabulary early, is related to such events. Very passionate movies. Not tech. And I was invited to speak at a tech conference in Spanish, and that is when I said I don't even know to say keyboard in specific. Now if I'm thinking maybe I will, because I heard it, but in these telenovelas, they will never describe like, oh, a table with fruits and everything. No, it was more about the action. You cheated on me, you did something wrong, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I could never present like a program or a product, technologically speaking, in server, because my vocabulary is limited. And why I'm mentioning as an embarrassment is I have to admit that sometimes I'm struggling and I create words in my mind. I mean, I invent words that I feel this is how they should sound like in Spanish. Yeah. And there are see people not reacting to it, like, yeah, it didn't work. Because I mix them Italian and French in there. And Romanian language is a Latin-based language. So I'm like, God damn it, I was so close to having a cool sentence in my mind, but my friends are like, no, this is invented, Ioana. And it might not be just me, it might be more than people, but I also feel sometimes people understand what I'm saying. And at this point in my life, if they understand what I want to say, that's good enough for me. I don't want them to praise me like, oh my God, you talk so well. On the brighter side, for example, I am not upset when people pronounce my name when we meet or anything, because I understand it's a language barrier. I would get mad at this point if they write to me on my email, which has a small I, and they write me Lona. You see a small I, you see the dot on the I. How you say Lona? I'm like, because this is the difference. If you do a mistake, because naturally you cannot say Ioana easily first time or second, or you read my name for the first time and it's different in your language, I'm okay. You didn't do it on purpose, it's not mean. But when you write to me, if you don't even check my name, how it is spelled, that's lack of interest. So this is when you correct people telling, no, my name is this. But other than that, if I'm presented Ioana, which most people would present me first time they see my name, I'll go on stage and I even have a slide this day joking, I'm not Luana, I would love to be Hawaiian with this kind of name, but it's Ioana, I'm fine. This should not be a blocker for you to speak with me, mean intention behind, bragging. And unfortunately, while you remember the case I mentioned, I was in US, I was working in a shop, and they figured out that I have an accent from probably Eastern Europe. And, they were like, where are you from? I'm from Romania. Oh, poor you. You're so unlucky to be born there. I was like 20 years old. I was in US, living my best life in terms of traveling from a small city in Romania to US, flying, was the first time for me. And I was telling the man, I don't feel pity for me. I'm like, I'm here in your country speaking your language, and I understand. I can get by. I can live here. You will not be able to do this in Romania. So I pity you that you don't have the chance to learn another language, travel to another culture, to understand how big of a deal it is. This for me it was, and now I have almost 50 countries visited. Maybe the amount of geography, history, culture, politics that I learned just by traveling there and talking to locals or experiencing local stuff, there's nothing greater than these lessons there. I having an accent, it didn't affect me. That they try to like, oh, poor you. We don't choose where we are born. We literally choose what we do with opportunities given. Like, do you want to travel to a country? Some will say yes, some not. I said yes because I wanted to experience. Listening to, I don't understand many languages. Like in German, I don't understand the full German, but I will still try to read more, learn more, because knowing that language gives you access to more knowledge, or just makes you feel more safe because you're in a place where you understand what's written. When I was young, being from Transylvania, I used to understand a bit of Hungarian, but with not practicing it, I forgot it. And when I started traveling for conferences, one of the airports I used a lot was Budapest, being very close to Cluj or having direct connection. And then is when I realized, God damn, it would have been so easy if I knew a bit more of Hungarian, just to make it easier for me, not for others again. So even if these moments are hard or embarrassing or whatever happens with your accent or your mistakes, just move over. People will forget next time. They will still reach you if you have a good thing, a solution set in tech or presentation. These are just um, how to say, these are just the spiciness of the
It
language.
is,
And
yeah.
for example, in pandemic, when people start recording talks, you miss this because they were recording till they had the perfect version.
Yeah.
They didn't make mistakes and say like, "Oh, what's word is that? That's a not good word. Let me try another one." You know,
This is
things like
something
that.
that we don't. I usually don't edit the podcasts as
Yeah,
far as it's okay to understand, and the same for my videos on YouTube. I try to make it the more real possible because in real life we make mistakes and people have
exactly.
to feel this because this is how real life is, right? I loved
Yeah,
also that you touched on the inventing words. It's something that I'm from Brazil, from the south of Brazil, so we have very close connections with Uruguay and Argentina, and we say that we speak Portuñol, which is a mix of Portuguese and Espanol, which is Spanish. Uh, and sometimes I don't know, like I live here in Barcelona, sometimes I don't
hmm,
know exactly the word, and I say something in Portuñol, and I made myself understandable. And sometimes I even learn because someone would say, "Oh, this is how you would say this instead of
exactly.
how you
Oh,
said." And I like when people correct me because then I learn.
exactly.
And I also love to read in a different language. So nowadays, for instance, I'm reading in Spanish and I gain so much vocabulary by doing so, which is something that I encourage anyone that wants to speak or learn any language. It's such a great way to improve and to learn new words.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, especially for vocabulary work. Because even in tech, you use the same English words all day, same situation, nothing changes much. But if you start reading literature that is not tech, not
Yeah.
something different domain, for sure the vocabulary changes and different words are
Yeah.
100% very good
Another
advice.
another thing that I want to do as well is to speak in a conference in Spanish to prove to
Hmm.
myself that I can, because I sometimes get myself talking to myself in Spanish just to practice if I could do
Hmm.
it. And I think I would be able to give a talk in Spanish, at least a short one. So maybe I will at some point go to a meetup or something like
It's a
that just
bright
to
new
try.
year, Vanya.
It
It's a
is,
bright new
yeah.
year. I'll ask you if you want me. I'll be your accountability partner, and I'll be back at the end of the year to see how you've been or give you opportunity. I think it's a really good idea to try.
Yeah.
Especially if you get like in my case, I was thinking for like a lightning talk or something that can start a discussion after, but doesn't put you to
Yeah.
sweat for half an hour in
Yeah.
so much. But it's a good idea. Really cool.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Let's switch gears a little bit. There is a question that I have never asked anyone in this podcast, so you're gonna be the first one answering it. If you could choose to go to the past or the future, which one would you choose? Which year would you go to? And what would you do?
Wow, it's a tough one. Um, I will definitely not go in the future, even if I am curious and I would love to see what in like 100 or two 200 years will be on planet.
Mm-hmm.
But it really depends if I go back with the memory I have right now, or I'll be again a kiddo. Um, I will
Now
maybe
let's
try
say
to.
you know everything you know right now, and you could choose to go to the past then.
Oh, yes, I would go. I would go. I don't know, I would go even maybe it's very hard uh, before the wars because I don't know if I will survive a war and I will definitely not be able to tell people not to have it. But I would go. I want to live more. I really love life per se, so that's why I would not go in the future to minimize my life to
Mm.
shortcut. I would even if I have to relive it, the same thing. I will relive life. I love life. Um, I would go and do, I would be more confident. Anywhere I would go, I would just go back in time and don't be, um, discouraged by, oh, I'm from a small village or I'm from a poor family or, oh, you're Romanian, European Union, you're like second class citizen. I'm not in Schengen. Oh, wow, super. I don't mind. I would literally be the most confident person in the room if I would go back with my knowledge right now, because I know that this is things that are not under my control. I cannot change it. So what I can control is be confident and help others with my confident way. Teaching, learning, pushing others to do better, more, myself included, doing more. This is, I will go back in history and try to empower people to do better in their roles.
I loved it. Now I want to ask you, what would you do if you were not in tech? You know those moments when you are a kid and you say, "Oh, I want to be."
I tried, when I see kids being asked that, I always like, what did I want to be when I remember I was already in school, so not that kiddo. I was not that young. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to draw houses or, stuff like that. Unfortunately, I am not complaining at any point, but unfortunately, it was one of the most expensive things to be in Romania, because you need like design practice, you need a lot of tools like crayons, cartoons to do stuff. It was out of my league. That's why I turned to, I'm good with maths, let's do tech. But nowadays, I would go fully a bit more offline. I would, as you can see in the video, me, I would do a lot of my gardening, plants. I have a little jungle at home. I would love to have a space where you can be outside doing stuff like crafting. If I would not do tech at this point, I would probably want to do crafting or this kind of gatherings with people. They can be creative, give them, different things that they never experienced. Because going back to the bad side that we mentioned, like, I was from my background, I know so much of like how things are grown because I grew food before. Like when people talked in the pandemic, let's grow something in my balcony. My memories from the childhood when I had to work so much the land were like, oh my God, you don't even know how hard it is. But again, having that, I feel privileged right now that I had that experience, because I understand how things grow, how much time you need, what do they need, how to keep a plant alive. Maybe not something that important nowadays, but again, it's part of like, if something happens, I'm confident that I can handle a new situation without being stuck or blocked. I love crafting and doing these kind of offline things. I probably, because I spend so much time online. So I would, if I would not do tech and, could do something around that, I'd probably choose to do that.
We are similar in this. When I was asked this question, I answered that I would love to be a gardener. I have a garden in my balcony as well. I plant succulents and I love plants. And this is something that I inherited from my mom. She loves to grow things. The salad that she eats, the tomatoes and the fruits and everything.
Exactly.
And at the same time, this offline stuff, like things that will, make you more active, not just sitting in a chair, looking in front of a computer and like exploring the real things that are out there. Ioana, it's been great to chat with you here. Is there anything you would like to ask me?
When you're gonna have the conference in Spanish?
This is something that I would love to do. We can prepare something in here.
No, just wanted to make a push there. Like, don't forget about that. No, I had a really a blast talking. I'm more than happy that we managed to meet after working online for like 2.5 years, 3 years, and we met in person. Definitely looking forward to meet again and present English or Spanish, or just being around the conference is nice. All good from my side. I don't think I have a question, but I'm definitely curious to see how this podcast will go out.
Okay, so I will leave you space for a final message to our audience before we wrap it up.
I think my final message would be to encourage everyone to either practice the languages that they know more or to learn something new. I know people are having different how to say feelings about Duolingo or any other app. This is not sponsored, but I have a strike that almost 800 days there, so it's something that I practice daily, just to again use my mind a bit, try to knowledge other cultures. It's even when they give us, stupid examples like with bears in Berlin. I understand the joke, but it's not that I'm gonna meet a bear and tell him something that I learned in Duolingo. But it just keeps you anchored and gives fun situations to learn about. So don't be put back by your accent. Don't let yourself feel small because you don't speak perfect language. Just try. I was able to order pharmaceutical products for myself in France while being in Morocco, in French, sorry, while being in Morocco. Because I had to. And I was like, okay, they gave me what I wanted. They understood me. This is the important thing at the end of it. My accent was terrible. The words I used probably were incorrect sentence or, past tense or anything. So don't let yourself put back by this situation. Just try to speak. People most of the times are more happy to hear you speak a different language. They will help you by correcting you or share with you new words. They will give you the space and time, they will try to speak slower for you to understand. And it just creates such a different and most of the times a good relation that I encourage everyone to try all the time. So go ahead, try a new language, try new words, just make it fun for yourself.
Thank you very much. It was awesome speaking with you again, and I hope to see you around. And for you that are listening to the podcast, I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I talk to you in the next one. Bye.
This podcast was edited by Ralf Carneiro.